Hey, what's up guys? Taylor here with Defenders and Disciples, and today I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite drills for diagnosing and fixing poor marksmanship. If you haven't already, do me a favor and go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. And if you have subscribed, do me another favor and hit that bell so you can be notified of our future videos. When we're discussing marksmanship, the fundamentals of marksmanship include aiming, trigger control, breath control, hold control, and then follow through, which follow through is essentially just doing the other four things throughout the duration of the shot. And then the two most important fundamentals are trigger control and then aiming. Aiming being the alignment of the sights with the target, and then trigger control being the skillful manipulation of the trigger, pressing that trigger straight to the rear without disturbing the sights. The reason that trigger control and aiming are the most important fundamentals is because if you mess those two up, your shot's gonna be off. I mean, you can mess up breathing, you can mess up hold control to an extent, and the others, but if you mess up trigger control or aiming, and if you slap that trigger to the rear with a poor grip, then there's a good chance that you're gonna miss the target. But the truth is, it's really not that hard to either aim or have proper trigger control. I can take a brand new shooter who's never shot before, or even someone who maybe has bad habits developed over a lifetime of shooting, and give them an unloaded gun and teach them how to aim and teach them how to skillfully manipulate that trigger in really not that much time. But you take that new shooter, or you take that student who you just coached on an unloaded gun, and then you insert ammunition into that gun, and their first shot usually is gonna be right in the center of the target. And a huge smile is gonna form on their face and they realize like they can shoot. But soon after that, usually the second shot, it's gonna be, for a right-handed shooter, it's gonna be low and to the left, or for a left-handed shooter, it's gonna be low and to the right. And the reason this is happening is because they're doing what's called anticipating the shot, the act of bracing for that shot before the recoil actually takes place. And right before it goes off, you either squeeze really tight, or you try to force it to go off, and you can't stand the suspense so that you know what's going to happen and it's not a surprise to you. And that's where the shot anticipation comes from. And so if I had a student that does this, if I had them practice on the unloaded gun and then I give them a loaded gun, and now all of a sudden they're anticipating the shot, I can either tell them to not do it, through saying like focus on your sight picture and slowly press the trigger to the rear, or I could go back to the unloaded gun and just have them practice on the unloaded gun again. But what's going to happen is very quickly they're going to go back to that proper sight alignment and that proper trigger control. But then when you go back to the loaded gun, they'll have that good shot on the first one, the first couple of shots, and then their accuracy will begin to degrade as the shots go on, because you're creating a dry fire mindset inside their brain, and then you're creating a live fire mindset. And in the dry fire mindset, they know the gun is dry, so they expect the click. They expect it not to have recoil. So the problem is really not their trigger control or their aiming, it's applying those two things throughout the duration of the shot, and that's follow through. And at the absolute risk of sounding like a nerd, nerd alert! This is why I like to say that follow through is somewhat of a meta fundamental, because if you think about follow through, it's including all the other fundamentals, but it's doing those fundamentals throughout the duration of the shot. Just because you know how to apply proper trigger control and aiming in dry fire doesn't mean you know how to do it in live fire. So that is where the ball and dummy drill come into play. So you take a ball round and then you take a dummy round, and a dummy round is essentially just an inert round that has the same shape as a live round. It just doesn't have the powder, and it's one piece. And you load them intermittently in the magazine. It prevents the shooter from knowing when the gun is going to go click and when the gun is going to go bang. So they'll be aiming in, they'll fire a few, they'll go through a few strings of fire, and then every so often, randomly, the gun will go click. And what I like to do when I'm working with a student, and you can do this for yourself, I like to have the first few rounds be live rounds, and then I like to have like that third or fourth or fifth round be a dummy round, so that you're in that live fire mindset. But then once you get to that dummy round, it goes click and the muzzle dips. And over time, what it does is it inoculates you to the recoil. Obviously, a small explosion going off in front of your face is not natural. So if you're not used to that, then your body is going to have a natural response to that. And that natural response is to brace and protect yourself. And so early on, when I'm doing these ball and dummy drills with someone, I like to primarily have dummy rounds during the beginning stages of that drill, and then slowly invert the number of dummy rounds with live rounds. So towards the end of the drill, I'll have more live rounds until eventually they'll have a full magazine with just live rounds. If at any point you notice their shots to start to drop low and to the left or low and to the right, then just go back to more dummy rounds and slowly kind of gauge based on how their shooting performance is. And on that, please do not blindly apply the ball and dummy drill. You need to look at the target. You need to let the target tell the story of whether or not that shooter needs a ball and dummy drill. Because I promise you, if you take an experienced shooter who can shoot fast and can shoot accurate and you do a ball and dummy drill with them, you're gonna see the muzzle dip. The difference between an inexperienced shooter or a novice shooter and someone who's a seasoned shooter is the inexperienced shooter is dipping the muzzle before the ignition sequence, before the round is going off. Whereas the experienced or seasoned shooter, they're mitigating recoil after the shot has gone off. Because you can think about the gun and the bullet as a system. Before the bullet's fired, the gun, the cartridge, the bullet, and you are one system. So any input into that system affects all the parts. But once the bullet leaves the muzzle, it's now two systems. And so you can do whatever you want to the gun at that point, and it's not going to do anything to affect the ballistic trajectory of that bullet. So let the target and let the timer tell the story whenever you're trying to coach or trying to instruct someone. Okay, so next I'm going to demonstrate how to do this drill. I have a magazine loaded with some dummy rounds intermittently loaded in there. It's a 10-round magazine. I got one in the chamber. The one in the chamber I know is a live round, so that one's gonna go bang. And so when I clear these malfunctions, typically I do tap rack, but because I don't wanna lose these dummy rounds, I'm just going to administratively clear it so I know where it is and I don't have to go search for the next 30 minutes of where these rounds are. Well, and I just did it. There we go. So that is the ball and dummy drill. I did dip, but if you go back, I'm pretty sure you'll see that it clicked and then it dipped. So that's just basically how you do the drill. You can do it by yourself. If you have a buddy you go to the range with, you load each other's mags and then go through it and laugh at each other whenever each of you anticipates the shot. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all that, you know, YouTube stuff. If you haven't liked the video, comment as well. Let me know if there's something I said that you think is stupid or wrong or whatever. But if you're interested in me coaching you on this and instructing you on this and a number of other drills that I like to use with my students, you can check out below in the description some upcoming courses we have. We have some basic rifle and basic pistol courses coming up. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, train to a higher standard. All right, guy, keep it down. Keep it down over there. Welcome to Tennessee, folks.